All right, welcome back, gamers. Justin here with you again, and we are doing developer blog number 8 today, which focuses almost solely on artificial intelligence, although we are going to talk about the budget towards the end of this. We are also going to start doing chapters, so you should be able to kind of see that on the screen and see where things bounce around a little bit. So I'll try to be a little bit more specific with that as we progress as well. So, that's kind of been my request. You guys like to kind of bounce around, and I totally get that. So we will try to accommodate. So with that said, then I'm inside a Visual Studio here. And we're just going to jump straight into artificial intelligence because that's what this entire sprint is about. And we're today marks a week deep into that sprint, and I think that I've made pretty good progress with this so far. So on track, I think we're in good shape. But I'm going to kind of walk through this here and explain what each of these parameters mean, or properties mean, and how they're used. And, hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a deeper understanding of how we want the artificial behavior to behave, at least initially. And I want to stress this. So this is not what the AI will look like, say, a year or 2 years from now. And obviously because it'll evolve. But more importantly, what we want to do is have more of like a true AI, or more like a machine learning algorithm that actually drives the behavior of this. And we want that to learn based on player behavior, right? So if players find things that's are kind of interesting, or there's certain behaviors start to evolve or something like that, we want the AI to kind of mimic that. And so long range, we'll start to incorporate some things like machine learning, maybe even some true artificial intelligence behind the scenes to play that out. But we can't really do that until we see how the players actually play and behave in the game. And so that's something that's on the long-term roadmap, but be aware of that. So, right now it's basically just kind of a series of rules and behaviors and ways that we want the AI to interact. But long-term, it'll be much more dynamic. At least that's the goal. So with all of that out of the way, what we're looking at here on the screen, so I'm inside of Visual Studio, for those of you that don't know. And inside of Visual Studio, we have what we call a scriptable object, or actually inside of Unity. A scriptable object is part of Unity. And just, for those of you that aren't real keen on this, just think of a scriptable object as like a way to contain data about a particular object. So we set up these properties, we can set these properties, and then based on these values, or the values of the property, we can take certain actions. And what this allows us to do is inside of the Unity editor, we can just start making little tweaks and changes and stuff without actually having to write code. So if we write our scripts properly, to properly utilize all of these properties, then we can make dynamic changes incredibly quickly, and in real time, even in some cases. So it's really cool. That's what I'm getting at. So, but we'll kind of step through this. So the faction details, this is more for like GUI purposes and stuff like that. And all it is just a name, description, and a short description. And that may expand as we need stuff for the GUI, but ultimately it's, we need a way to be able to show the user details on screen. But this will undoubtedly expand as we progress, but it's really not important. Then we have a couple of prefabs, so we bring in things like what the character is, what weapon they're carrying, the faction layer mask. So we use layers quite a bit to determine how many friendlies and how many enemies are around them. So basically each faction has their own layer inside of the game, and that allows us to do things like sphere casting and that type to kind of gain an understanding of what's around us and what the surroundings look like, right? So, and for those of you that don't know, a sphere cast, basically from the center point, you cast a sphere out, and it'll come back with any collider hits. And, and then based off of that, we can pass in layer masks and stuff to say, okay, how many scroungers are around me? How many players are around me? How many hunters are around me? Those types of things. So we haven't fully put in all of the layer masks yet. So we've started building this out just as a scrounger. So right now, Scrounger is working in the game. It's able to pathfind, able to attack, flee, run, to detect friendlies, detect enemies, those types of things. So all of that kind of core is working now. But that's what we're doing under the hood. So for those of you curious, we use those layer masks. We put each AI on its own layer mask, and then based off of that, we can have those layers basically interact with one another to determine the situational awareness, let's call it, for the AI. So this next section is behavior parameters. And this is where absolutely everything comes into play. So the behavior parameters really do define the way the AI behaves. So I'm going to step through each of these, and this probably isn't a final list, and some of these may get tweaked a little bit, but it should be pretty close, at least to begin with. So aggression is pretty straightforward. How aggressive is the AI? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not aggressive at all, 10 being I'm going to basically fire on sight. And we use this in our calculations to determine whether they should flee or fight. So that's what aggression is. It's not the sole indicator. So, basically if they're hyper aggressive, there are still ways where they will want to flee from you. And we'll get into some of those here in a minute. But aggression is just that. It's how aggressive are they going to behave towards you as a player. Self-interest is just that. So when we're talking about these variables, think of yourself as the AI, right? So the AI has a value called self-interest, and that's how interested am I in surviving? Am I, a 1 is like I don't really care, basically suicidal, which is a kind of a poor way to put it. But a 10 is, I'm going all in. It's like it's all about me. I am 100% self-interested, and I'm going to do everything I can to survive. Okay, so and then everything in between that is the scale goes up and down. And so again, that is used in the fight or flee, or flee or fight mechanics. How interested am I in my self-well-being? Then we have the self-comfort zone. And the self-comfort zone is one of these variables that will override a lot of things, or some things at least. The self-comfort zone is if a player is too close, I am not okay with that. And I will defend myself, basically. So, it's kind of this, how close can you get to me before I decide, okay, that's too close and I need to either warn you or start attacking or push you away or flee, whatever my behavior says I should do. But basically, if you're within this range, you're too close. Now, the group interest is an interesting one. And same with the group comfort. So group interest is the same as self-interest, but it's more about how willing am I to protect those around me that are the same faction. So a high group interest means that if somebody on my faction is being attacked, I am very likely to intercede in that. If I have a low group interest, I am not really interested. I'm more of a lone wolf. I just kind of like you do you, and I'm going to go do me over here and not really intervene anywhere. So, and then group comfort is along those same lines, but it's basically how comfortable am I? Like, what's the ideal group for me to be in? And that could be 1, like I'm a lone wolf, or it could be 5 or 10, or I like big groups, or I like medium-sized groups, or whatever it may be. And the AI will actively search out and try to find others to kind of group up with, like inside of the game. So not an official group, but if they come across another scrounger and they both have a high group interest and that group interest hasn't been exceeded, then they will basically pair up and start patrolling together. So what we're hoping to end up with here is that as the servers proceed, you're going to come across kind of packs of particular factions. Not all, because some are lone wolves and they will stay alone wherever possible. But anybody with a group comfort will, so if I have a group comfort value of 3, say, the perfect group for me is 3, and I'm going to, as I'm patrolling, I'm going to try and find a group that will get me to that ideal comfort level. This is also used inside of calculations to determine whether we should fight or flee. So there is a calculation in here that, basically if the AI severely overwhelms you, so if it's like a 3-to-1 ratio, I think is what I have it set to right now, although that can be customized. So basically if there are 3 AIs, even if they are not... Like, even if their self-interest is really low, even if their aggression is very low, they overwhelm you so much that they're probably going to attack. So, and the idea being is that as we get into these groups, if that comfort level is above a certain threshold and they feel like they have this situational awareness, we want them to attack. And that's kind of what this group comfort comes into play with as well. So it's it's a part of group interest along with group comfort, along with aggression and self-interest. So all of those variables kind of play into this. But ultimately, if they severely overwhelm you, we want them to try to take that situational awareness and use it to their advantage. Warning period is just that. So this is a 0 to 5 seconds. So a warning period is basically, will they warn you prior to attacking? So if you step into their comfort zone or if they're aggressive enough, will they warn you? And some factions will not, others will. And it's based on this is how much warning time they will give you. So some may only give you 1 second of warning. They may shout out to you or fire a warning shot or something like that. And then they'll just start straight up trying to kill you. So that's the idea of a warning period. The time to suppress. So initially, the way our AI will behave is they will try to suppress you. Some factions will. I can't say all. So some factions that have a high self-interest rating, what they'll try to do is suppress you while they're backing off. So they will try to disengage from you while suppressing. And what this time to suppression is basically how long will they try to suppress you. So anywhere from 0 to 5 seconds. And all that is basically just kind of a spray and pray in your general direction with the hopes that you'll take cover. And that should give them time, hopefully, to retreat a little bit. Now, most guns in the game will actually, they'll go through multiple clips trying to do this, or multiple magazines. 30 round spray, it's 900 rounds a minute or something like that, like some of these weapons do. They're going to go through 2 or 3 magazines trying to suppress you. So basically, if we set that to like 1 second, then they're going to give you roughly one magazine worth, or 30 rounds. If we give them 5 seconds, they may go through 4 magazines. So it's all about how willing are they to try and retreat and get away from you. And then the level of suppression, this is another one. So, if we set this is just a 0 to 1 range. So a 1 is they're basically just going to empty a clip as rapidly as they can. A 0 is, I'm here on this level of suppression. A 0 is they'll just kind of pop off shots, right? It's like they'll conserve their ammo. They'll try to just kind of pop off shots in your general direction, hoping that will push you into cover. So, anywhere from a 0 to 1 kind of depends on that. 1, just like I said, a full spray and pray. A 0 is more like I'm just going to pop off like 1 or 2 round bursts at you periodically to try and push you into cover. And then one of the last ones here, I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to go that far. I cheated a little bit, I guess. I showed you the next section, but that's okay. So aggression while suppressing. So what this is that if they have successfully suppressed you, so if we gave them a time to suppress of 5, a level of suppression 1, and you just hit the deck looking for cover, this is how likely they are to push you. In some cases, like a low value on this, they're going to try and flee. In other cases, if we set this to a 10 and they've got you what they feel is suppressed, they're really going to push forward and start to become more aggressive with you, basically trying to hunt you down at that point. This is not the only value taken into account here, though. There are some things like the overall self-interest, the group interest, that type of stuff, that as well as the group size. That we'll take into account here. But this is one of the variables here to try and offset some of that to, if we want them to actively push you and force into you while you're suppressed, then this is a value that will help us ensure that happens. The next one here is call for help range. So, what this one is basically how far we look for friendlies. So if you engage and there is another friendly within 1 to 50 meters here, that's how far they will basically look for help. And kind of what comes into this group interest and group comfort. So even though they may not be grouped up, they may have a friend within 50 meters that would hear them if they do engage. And based on the faction and some of these other settings, they may or may not come for help. But the call for help range is basically like how far should I look out from the center of the AI to determine if I would win this engagement or not. Do I have a bunch of friendlies around me? And if I do, then okay, I may be more likely to attack you. If I don't, then maybe I'm going to make a different decision there. But this is the maximum range that we'll look for a call for help. And we do have voice lines that kind of go along with this. And then there are also some settings in here that, or not settings, but more scripts, like if I hear gunshots, I'm going to start looking at this range to see if it's somebody of my faction. And if it is, then, maybe I come to their help, based on some of these other settings. Maybe I don't, kind of, based on what we talked about up above here, it's, I may or may not come to your aid. Then the last one is the player awareness range. So how far out should I become aware of my surroundings, right? So it's the same as the call for help range, except this is the player awareness range. Now, just because they know you're there may not trigger behavior. So it's more than just kind of a dumb calculation of, oh, I know there's a player there, I'm going to go make a determination. The game itself will know that you are there. But if you haven't made your presence aware to them, there are overrides that will make it to where they don't really know that you're there. But from an AI perspective, I need to track that. I need to know that you're there because a bunch of these other calculations kind of come into play here. But in essence, this is how far out they will start tracking you. Maybe not actively tracking you, but kind of, subconsciously knowing that you're there is the best way to maybe talk about that. And then lastly, the three kind of last parameters here: fire on sight, fire warning shots, and will they roam? And so fire on sight is pretty clear. If this is true, if they see you, they'll immediately start shooting. The fire warning shots, again, if true, they will put some warning shots over your head or around you, intentionally missing. And there may be voice lines associated with that as well to try and suppress you and get you to back off of them. And then lastly, the will roam. If this is true, then they will randomly grab patrol points and just kind of start walking around the map. And as they're doing that, they may try to group up. They may try to form little pods or clusters of other faction members. But ultimately, this is, if this is set to false, then they will just kind of, they will still roam a little bit, but within like a 20 or 30 meter radius of their initial spawn point. So they'll just kind of stay in that area if we don't allow them to roam. So the next section here, and I know we're getting a little lengthy here, and that's because there's quite a bit to talk about here. So I may actually not do the budget stuff today. We may just stick to the AI stuff here. But regardless, I'll try to kind of breeze through some of these others pretty quickly. So the fight or flight mechanism. So the flee distance. So if the AI decides, okay, I need to flight. This isn't a good engagement for me. I have too much self-interest, whatever it may be, the reason that they made that decision. This is a number of how far they will flee before trying to reassess their situation. Okay. So it's, some may go out to 100 meters, some may only go to 10 meters. But if it's 100 meters, they're kind of a chicken shit at that point. It's like, holy shit, I saw somebody, I need to run away, and I'm going to run away for 100 meters to try and get out of here. They will try to find cover and stuff in that and try to put cover between you and between themselves and you. But ultimately, they're basically going to turn and run, and this is the distance that they're going to run for. And then the surrounding check timer is basically just how often do they look around. And this it could be every second where they're just kind of like head on a swivel. It could be as much as 10 seconds where, I'm going to start doing this action. I'm going to kind of lose interest and not really, be that aware of my surroundings. So we wanted to control that because it, some things like a hunter class, they're going to be much more aware of their surroundings than say, a scrounger, for example. And I don't know exactly what those parameters look like right now, but that's the idea with that. It's just how frequently do I check my surroundings to see if I'm okay. Then we get into the accuracy. So they will have an aim base accuracy and then 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, and 300. So if I have a base aim accuracy of say 85 or 0.85, and you're at 100 meters, then we're basically going to take this number, multiply it by this number, and that'll be roughly how accurate I should be. So, obviously the further you go away, unless you're a sniper class, the more accurate or less accurate you will become. If you're a sniper, you'll be more accurate at this range, but less accurate up close. So that's kind of the idea with that. But it's all just offsets, right? So we have a base value, and then depending on the distance from you and the player, it depends on the offset that gets set with that. This may be a little too naive though. And I admit that up front. I'm going to play around with this. I'm going to see how this behaves, and if they're just one tapping me every time I see them, then we can either offset this a little bit more or maybe lower their base accuracy. But I'm hoping that these parameters alone will be enough to be able to tune the AI's, ability to one tap you pretty effectively. And then we're kind of getting down here to the end here. So the AI faction parameters, these are the same parameters as above, except how they react to opposing factions. So there will be kind of faction wars that break out. So, a hunter is very aggressive. It's going to kill almost everybody on sight. So a hunter AI aggression may be very high against other AIs. But like a collector that's basically just hide in the shadows is going to have a very low AI aggression. So, and this can go all the way down to 0. We haven't set the full range here, but it could just be that I'm not going to engage AI at all. But it could be that I'm going to engage absolutely everybody, including AI. So that's what all of these settings are wrapped around, and they all have the same meanings as the one above towards the player, right? But now it's just AI instead of player-based. Lastly, we've got voice line parameters. So we've got, will we warn with voice? Will the AI warn with voice? So if I find another AI, do I warn them with my voice? And then taunting. We thought this was kind of cool. So if they're shooting and they've got you suppressed, they may start taunting you with some of their voice lines. And then same thing, will they taunt AI? So we think it'll be kind of cool when we get some of these AI wars going on, that, the AI will start taunting each other instead of just you. And then the last one right now is just chatter with faction, and there will be a lot more of these. So this is one of those areas that we haven't really fully fleshed out yet. But ultimately that's kind of the 5 that we've got started here. The chatter with faction is just like they'll have kind of casual conversations with each other. So as they get into groups and stuff, they may just talk about random stuff, right? We're just going to kind of have random voice lines that you would like BS with your friend type of thing. So, with all of that though, this actually took a lot longer than I thought it would. So I'm actually just going to stop there. I'll do a separate video on our budget, and put that out, because I've had a lot of questions just about the overall budget of the game, how it works, that's that type of stuff. So, so I'll leave that here. We'll focus solely on AI for this developer blog, and then next time we'll come back, or I'll do a separate video for the budgeting. So, nonetheless, though, thanks for watching. I appreciate you, those that stuck around for 22 minutes here. But do all the social things. The like us, thumb up, throw a comment. Head over, pick up some merch, support us on Patreon, follow us on Twitter. I think we got a TikTok coming out soon, although I don't have the URLs and stuff for that. So, just do all of the social stuff. We greatly appreciate it. If you think we deserve it, do you think we've earned it? By all means, please support us any way that you can. With all of that said, though, thanks for your time. Hope you have a great week. I will talk to you probably Monday. All right, thanks, everybody.